Italy, nestled in the center of the Mediterranean, may well have the most varied cuisine of any country in the world. The Romans borrowed delicacies from every culture they conquered. As a result, the cuisine of the homeland took on international shadings, and the Italian palate became tuned early on to finer things. Italy herself has had a veritable embarrassment of riches for the table. The earth provided a cornucopia of delight, fields of grain ripening brown and golden, waiting to become pasta, vineyards so fruitful the Romans were compelled to create a god of wine, Bacchus. Piles of tomatoes ripening in glowing scarlet displays, myriads of vegetables, meats of all kinds, magnificent cheeses, and an orgy of bounty from the seas. Creating a well-balanced meal from these sources is a pleasure rather than a problem. Flavors blend, contrast, and counterbalance in a whirl of palatable delight. I think much of the mystery and sublimity of Italian cooking comes from her use of herbs and spices. This is where our tastes and creativity become all-important. Feel free to experiment. If you have an undying passion for basil, and the recipe only calls for a small pinch, well then add 2, and then taste. But please yourself first. After all, you are your own chef. There is another excellent reason for listening to one's own tastes. I have found batches of spices can vary in intensity due to weather, shipping, length of storage, and many other factors. So remember, recipes are places to begin. I stamp myself on the finished product with my variations and taste, and you can do it too. So remember, to thine own self be true. Viva Italia! Naturally, our choice of appetizers will depend to some extent upon the time of year, the temperature, and the seasonal fresh fruits available. One might not wish to serve a hot appetizer if there were readily available fresh honeydew melons, for instance, and what better way could they be served before an Italian dinner than with delicious prosciutto ham? This can be a totally unexpected treat because the combination of the fresh melon and the prepared ham is both unusual and provocative to the taste. Color and flavor, the red ham and the chartreuse melon, combine to excite and intrigue the palate. If it is served on either chilled silver or iced glass with appropriate garnishes, the effect is heightened, to say the least. Now here's how. Prosciutto and honeydew melon appetizer. 2 peeled, seeded honeydew melons cut into serving pieces. 1/2 pound thinly sliced prosciutto ham. 2 tablespoons olive oil. 2 tablespoons vinegar. 2 tablespoons wine. First, wrap the melon chunks with prosciutto, then fasten the prosciutto with brightly colored or cellophane toothpicks, and place them in a large bowl, sprinkle with the oil, wine, and vinegar mixture, and chill before serving. Of course, one can simply pin the prosciutto around the melon with festive little toothpicks, but a much more elegant manner of serving requires a little more time and effort on the part of the cook, but it's worth it. I make the pieces of melon a little longer and wider, and then just make a slit into the length of the melon about halfway through. Bring the slices of ham around the melon and tuck both sides into the slit. I have found if you work with the grain of the ham, it will bend quite nicely and remain tucked neatly into the little slot. This way, there are none of those nasty little slivers of wood lying about, and your guests are spared having to dispose of them. They're your guests. Let's hope they're worth this little extra effort. By the way, this could be prepared the day before and held wrapped in a dampened towel in the refrigerator. Italian first course, mozzarella marinara. Perhaps you feel secure in the kitchen and you're willing to try something a bit more complex. Well, my very favorite Italian first course is mozzarella marinara, a crisp crust surrounding melted mozzarella cheese with a rich tomato sauce tying the whole together. Now, this course should be served at the table and accompanied by a light chilled Chenin Blanc. I always warm the plates, by the way, so the cheese remains melted instead of hardening. First, make a square of cheese about 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches and roughly 1 inch thick. Make one of these for each guest. Now, your task will become much easier if you find the mozzarella cheese in blocks at the supermarket instead of the round balls. If you can find only the round cheeses, then use slices about 3/4 of an inch thick and reserve the end pieces. We now will make breadcrumbs. Break up bread 1 slice at a time into your blender, whirling it on low speed till the crumbs are formed. You will need about 12 slices worth of crumbs. I always make a little extra. There's no possible reason to skimp on breadcrumbs. After making the crumbs, beat up 6 eggs in a shallow bowl or pie plate and dip each slice of cheese in flour, covering it completely with a thin layer. Then dip the cheese in the eggs, then in the breadcrumbs, and make sure the crumbs cover the cheese completely. Pat it to be sure the coating sticks. Then dip it in the egg again and recoat it with the crumbs. You cannot be too careful. The entire operation depends on those steps. Slip the cheese packages onto wax paper and chill them well, even overnight. Now we heat the sauce. I myself use a product called ragu. Now, please don't be shocked. It's an excellent product, far better than many homemade travesties masquerading as sauces. So heat a large jar of ragu, simmering it in a saucepan. You can add some extra herbs if you like. Here is where the electric skillet comes to the forefront. Pour in 1 inch of cooking oil and heat it up to 350 degrees. The electric skillet takes all the guesswork out of this step. Thank goodness. Take the breaded cheese from the refrigerator and very carefully lower them all into the hot oil. Fry them till they're a deep golden brown, and then turn them very carefully, if you have to. And this usually takes me about 5 nerve-wracking minutes. And then when they are all beautiful, deep golden brown, I transfer them immediately to the preheated plates. Then I quickly ladle a generous portion of sauce on them and garnish them with a parsley sprig and serve them at once. These are very close to being divine. Yes, very close indeed. My guests usually eat the first few bites in reverent silence, and then the roars of approval become deafening. Salads, many times, become a tired offering. However, a beautifully conceived and garnished salad can provide a spectacular counterpoint to any meal. The Italians classify the salad as antipasto, or before the pasta. Now, we can take this one step further and use the salad to precede the main course. The combination of crisp, fresh greens and a myriad of garnishes and a tangy dressing is a superb prelude to any course. Here's a recipe for Italian green salad. 1/4 of a cup of olive oil, 1/8 of a cup of red wine vinegar, 1/8 of a cup of lemon juice, 1/2 teaspoonful of salt, 1/2 teaspoonful of pepper, 1/8 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of oregano, 1 teaspoon of chopped parsley, 2 dashes of Tabasco sauce, 1 sliced pared cucumber, 1 peeled, thinly sliced medium onion, white, and 1 head of escarole, 2 heads of Boston lettuce, 1 head of romaine, and you've got it. Fill a salad bowl with escarole, Boston lettuce, and romaine. I always recommend a wooden salad bowl because it seems to mellow and blend the flavors. Now, in another bowl, combine the remaining ingredients. Mix them well and chill for 1 hour, and then pour over the salad and serve. There are many optional garnishes: thin-sliced Genoa salami, large ripe olives, hard-boiled eggs, croutons, artichoke hearts, sliced mushrooms, pimento slices, or anchovy fillets. These can be added to the salad and also drenched with the dressing at the time of serving. Inch-long chops of celery add a great flavor. And with these garnishes, this becomes a glamorous cousin to the standard antipasto. Whether you're serving this as salad or antipasto, be sure that not only the serving bowl and the individual bowls are well chilled, but the salad silver as well. This is that extra little touch which marks careful and tasteful service. It's your reputation as a fine cook which is showing every time you offer food to a guest in your home. If you're going to serve bread with these, you may either use a good dry breadstick, perhaps with sesame seeds, or a hard Roman roll served red hot. Here we're playing the contrast in temperatures and the contrast between the spicy and the bland. Of course, the butter for the hot rolls will not be rock hard, please. It will be at room temperature, sufficiently cool to maintain its form and integrity, but soft enough to spread without effort. Now, a moment's pause, a glass of wine, some small conversation before the main course begins. The atmosphere, if you make it so, can become that of warm intimacy and good comradeship. These periods can become meaningful moments and fun. In The Town Mouse and the Country Mouse, we find a lovely piece of philosophy. A crust eaten in peace is better than a banquet partaken in anxiety. Veal is a superb meat to demonstrate the subtleties of Italian cuisine. It is amazingly versatile. It can be sauced literally hundreds of ways according to the whims of the chef. Perhaps our homemakers become discouraged or confused by the galaxy of possibilities, many of them extremely complex. But in the case of veal, personally, I think the less is more. A simple preparation allowing the integrity of the meat to shine through. Listen to the ease with which you can prepare this recipe and serve it with pride. A very famous recipe. Veal scallopini. 6 thin escalope, veal cutlets pounded and cut into ovals. 1/2 cup melted butter or margarine. 1/3 cup grated Parmesan cheese, 1 cup thinly sliced mushroom caps, salt and pepper, 2 bouillon cubes, 3 tablespoons of boiling water, 3 tablespoons of butter, 5 tablespoons of good sherry wine, and 1 dash of Tabasco. Now dip the veal slices into the melted butter and then into the grated cheese, and then set them aside or even refrigerate them. In a sauté or frying pan, melt a little butter or margarine and cook the mushrooms, stirring and turning them frequently. When the mushrooms are tender, add the bouillon cubes, boiling water, butter, and sherry, and bring everything to the boiling point. I then set this at the back of the stove. Then I heat the remaining butter and sauté the veal until browned on both sides. We will then season the veal with salt and granulated pepper and serve it with the mushroom sauce. This will serve 6 people. This entire procedure should be done at the very last possible second. I believe the veal should come straight from the kitchen to the table with no delays. When I serve these little lovelies, I always dress the platter with some fresh greens of a sort, and please don't forget the pre-warmed tray, so that the last guest served isn't forced to handle a cold plate and receive the impression that the meat is also cold. Our thoughts are influenced by so many things that one can't be too careful of the small details. I always try to find a nice complement for a meat dish of this caliber. A side dish based on rice might be appropriate here. It isn't as heavy as a pasta, and it carries a high nutritional value, and best of all, it tastes just right in the combination. I know most people don't think of rice as figuring in Italian menus, but surprisingly enough, northern Italy, crossed by the River Po and her many tributaries, is a major center for rice and wheat production. Now, we can trust the Italians, believe me, not to give us just plain steamed rice. Instead, we find glorified rice cooked with stock and wine and herbs, risotto milanese. Rice in the style of Milan. I think it makes a lovely counterpart to our scallopini. The rice is tinted a delicate yellow by the saffron, barely hinting of the subtle nuances of flavors awaiting us. Here's a recipe for risotto alla Milanese. 2 tablespoons of butter. Marrow from a slice of beef bone. 1 medium white onion, chopped finely, 2 cloves of garlic, crushed, 2 cups of uncooked rice, 1/2 teaspoon of saffron powder, or 2 or 3 threads of saffron, 1/4 cup white wine, 2 cups chicken stock or bouillon, 1½ cups of shredded Parmesan cheese, and there you have it. Melt the butter and marrow together in a heavy pot or saucepan. Add onion and garlic and cook for 5 minutes to flavor the butter. Next, pour the rice into the butter and marrow and stir to coat well. Add the saffron and the wine, and then the stock. By the way, I sometimes use canned stock, though lots of times I prefer to make my own. For many soup companies make a marvelous product, and sometimes my time is too valuable to prepare the long cooking stocks. Well, anyway, either way, bring this to a boil, pour the boiling mixture of rice and liquids into a casserole with a tight cover, and bake it for 45 minutes at 375 degrees. With the risotto in the oven, we are free to concentrate on the veal, which really deserves our undivided attention. The only last-minute preparation is tossing the risotto and Parmesan cheese together. The serving bowl for the rice should be pre-warmed. It isn't really necessary to blend all the Parmesan throughout the rice. I sometimes just gently sprinkle part of it over the top of the heaping rice, too, and this adds another subtle contrast of color. The rice should be a bright, rich golden hue due to the saffron, and the light creamy color of the cheese then softens the appearance. I have always thought combinations of various colors on the table can lend such a charming air to the entire event. You know, we really do eat with our eyes as well as our mouths. Now, with the veal and the saffron rice, both of which are pale in color, you should have a vegetable which has a darker color, contrasting to the warm colors of the other dishes. If you happen to be serving the spaghetti and meatballs, which is another recipe I'll tell you about in a minute, a beautiful dark green Italian bean would be lovely. If yours is one of those families who refuse to think of an Italian meal without the traditional spaghetti and meatballs, or if you want a less complex alternate to the veal scallopini and the risotto alla Milanese, here's a great pasta and sauce combination. The sauce calls for a minimum of 30 minutes simmering, plus the additional hour the meatballs will be cooking in it. The sauce can be prepared a day or two before and allowed to simmer for an entire day, and then refrigerated until you're ready to cook the meatballs. It doesn't hurt a thing, really. But if you have neither the time nor the inclination to spend that much time over a sauce, then try one of the really fine, authentic, old-world family recipes that are so attractively glass-packaged in the market. As I said, I sometimes use ragu. You never have to be ashamed of these, and if you care to add some of your own spices and extra ingredients, well, all you have done is save yourself a couple of hours in the kitchen. Either way, this is a family dietary staple, nutritious and delicious. It will be called for again and again throughout the years. The hard gluten wheat in the better pastas has high nutrient value and can be served to the family with confidence. First, let's make the sauce. Now, you might want to try this on other dishes. It's really very good. 1/2 pound of round steak, 1/4 pound of salted pork or pork sausage, 1 clove of garlic, 1/3 cup of white wine, 1 pound or 12-ounce can of tomatoes, 6-ounce can of tomato paste, 1/2 cup of water, 2 tablespoons full of chopped parsley, 1 teaspoonful of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and 1/2 teaspoon dried basil leaves. Now, this can vary according to your own taste. I usually use a little bit more. Wipe the round steak with a damp, absorbent paper and cut into 1/2-inch chunks and then set aside. Chop salt pork or sausage into small pieces. Put into a pot with the garlic and brown well. Add the beef and brown on all sides. Add the wine and cover. Cook slowly for 10 minutes. Stir in the tomatoes, tomato paste, water, parsley, salt and pepper, and basil. Reduce heat. Cook slowly for 30 minutes. When ready to serve, add the meatballs and cook slowly for 1 hour longer, stirring occasionally. Now, this is the way to make the meatballs. These are some of the most flavorful meatballs you are likely to find. It isn't a complicated recipe. Most of the work is in gathering the ingredients. Thank goodness all the proportions can be altered to your own taste. 2 eggs, 1/2 cup of milk, 3 crumbled slices of whole wheat bread, 3/4 of a pound of ground beef, 1/2 pound of ground pork, and 1/4 pound of ground veal, 1 minced medium onion, 1/2 cup finely chopped green pepper, 2 tablespoons of chopped parsley, 1 crushed large clove of garlic, and 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper or more to taste, a dash of ground cloves, a dash of nutmeg, and a dash of Tabasco. Beat the eggs slightly in a medium-sized bowl. Add milk and bread, and let stand for 5 minutes. Add all the other ingredients in the order given. Mix well. Shape into 48 3/4-inch balls. Place into a greased baking pan and bake for 15 minutes at 400 degrees, leaving the pan uncovered. Drain the meatballs and gently lower them into the simmering meat sauce long enough to heat them and blend the flavors. I usually consider 35 to 45 minutes completely adequate, but some people cook them for an hour. Now, here's the trick about preparing the spaghetti. You take 1 pound of spaghetti. That's the sole ingredient. The trick is how you put it into the pot. Hold the entire bunch at the top and gently and slowly lower it into the large pot of boiling water, which has been slightly salted. I sometimes add a teaspoonful of olive oil. Don't ask me why. Somebody told me to do it. Now, never break the spaghetti. Just be patient, and the boiling water will gradually soften the pasta so that it will bend and fold into the pot. A large fork could be useful here to gently stir the cooking pasta. Do it softly so as not to cut into the delicate strands. After it is cooked, al dente, drain. Then carefully arrange the pasta on the serving platter. Now, just as carefully, ladle the sauce and meatballs onto the top of the bed of pasta. A touch of greenery around the edge sets it off. Serve it with pride. You know, perhaps the best thing for us to remember when cooking pasta is that it should never be cooked to the point where it becomes a shapeless, formless mass of wallpaper paste. It should have, at the end, the same integrity of form with which it began its journey through the cooking procedure. It should never become a nondescript and disgusting wad of goo, lying there helpless before the ravages of some overzealous cook. If it sticks to the fork, you've gone too far. Throw it all out and start over again. We have spent too much time on the sauce and the meatballs to waste them on this gooey paste. There is a phrase in Italian to describe the correct degree of cooking, al dente. It means to the tooth, implying that the noodle retains its integrity. And to this, I could subscribe completely. A large pre-warmed platter heaped with the spaghetti, onto which has been ladled the sauce and meatball, is not only appropriate, but visually stimulating to the appetite. The large serving fork and spoon or ladle are necessary for ease of service. I always include a gravy boat of extra meat sauce on the table because some people, like myself, love a truly good sauce. It really can be a fun dish and should be thought of as such. How often a carefully and well-planned dinner is spoiled by an inappropriate or clumsily and over-prepared vegetable. Vegetables are such delicate things. Many cooks mutilate, inundate, desecrate their very essence. Many vegetable recipes strive to make us forget that we are eating vegetables. Growing at nature's bosom as they do, they absorb some of her most entrancing aromas and flavors. Too often they are overcooked, over-seasoned, or just plain overlooked. Now, here is an exceedingly simple side dish, and if carefully prepared, it can open new vistas to our tastes. Vegetables with their natural flavors enhanced are a dining pleasure. Herbed green beans. 1½ pound of fresh Italian green beans. 1½ teaspoonsful of salt. 3 tablespoonsful of melted butter. 1 pound of fresh sliced mushrooms. 1 teaspoon of MSG. 1 teaspoon of basil. Wash the beans, pick them over carefully, discarding the discolored or wilted beans. Cut or snap them into 3-inch pieces. Place them in a pot with boiling water to cover. Add the salt and then cover. Cook the beans until they are not quite tender and not a minute longer. In a frying pan, sauté the mushrooms in butter for 5 minutes. The mushrooms can be sautéed first, even earlier in the day, freeing us from more last-minute stovetop trouble. And set the mushrooms aside. Drain the beans and place them in an oven-proof serving bowl. Sprinkle the beans with MSG and basil. Now you can add the sautéed mushrooms and toss lightly. Cover with foil, placing them in a 350 oven for at least 5 to 10 minutes. This serves 6 people. Served in a bowl with a fairly tight-fitting cover, they will retain their flavor and temperature during the serving. It's very important to keep these little tempsters hot. That's the only way the flavors can intermingle and flow into one another. The braised mushrooms, the butter, the gentle essence of basil all contribute to the subtlety of appeal found in this dish. Well, we can't let this lovely dinner end on a whimper, or worse yet, a snarl. You know, I have the feeling that dessert should not be just the conclusion of the meal. It should be a lovely, lingering adieu, a gracious thank you to the guests, a compliment to them, and a toast to the friendliness of all gestures, the sharing of good food with good friends. The perfect theme to follow the more highly seasoned food we have eaten would be something not too bland, not too sweet, but with enough character to warrant note and aid the digestion. Aha! A fruit and a light wine. In combination? Of course. One of nature's delectable fruits, the peach, along with the vintner's most esteemed pressing, champagne. Peaches in champagne. 4 fresh, well-formed, not over-ripened peaches, or 2 large cans of sliced or halved peaches. 1 quart of good domestic champagne. Chill the peaches, the champagne, and the glasses, and the silverware. If you are using fresh peaches, be sure they are carefully peeled and delicately sliced or halved. If using canned peaches, after chilling them, drain and save the juice. Choose a glass that is large enough to accommodate both the peaches and the champagne. Place the fruit in the glass and carefully pour the champagne over it. Serve icy cold immediately. If using canned peaches, a teaspoon of the juice added to each glass gives even more flavor. This serves 6 people. After the dessert, I always have a pot of hot black coffee brewed, sometimes half espresso and half plain regular coffee. Then no meal is complete without that final touch, a liqueur to aid the digestion. I highly recommend Galliano, a blending of flavors capping off the Italian meal with a very authentic note, or Tuaca, or Amaretto, or the famous Sambuca, with a little coffee bean floating in it and lit, called Sambuca con Mosca. Well, there it is. You have prepared and served an Italian dinner that cannot be surpassed. Whether your guests are aware of fine cooking or not, they have been treated well in your home. From appetizers to dessert, the combinations of flavors, textures, odors, aromas, temperatures, all those subtle qualities which determine the success of a meal have been handled exquisitely. Take a bow. You have just proven yourself a fine cook. It wasn't that difficult, was it?